got all this figured out.
Better him than me.
You got it way farther than I did. I spent hours trying to get to it.
How about now? You have an audio signal? Check. Okay. Don't touch anything. Those the songs that Isaac has had us sing on Wednesday nights. Those of y'all are joining us online, you come in after the fact. We're singing some, well, they're called children's songs, but they're just fun songs. I was trying to remember, especially, we sang Father Abraham last week or Sunday night, I can't remember now. Tonight we sang I'm in the Lord's Army. The earliest memory that I have here because we used to have a junior church pretty regularly. And I don't know, I guess the earliest memory I have of a junior church, there was a little trailer sitting just outside this side of the church. I don't know if it was a trailer, it was a little portable building, and we had puppets in there. And so that's been a long time ago. probably close to 35 years ago, I'd say. And then pretty soon after that, our junior church, we moved upstairs in what is now just a storage area. And that's memorable because there for a while it didn't have any AC up there. So junior church in August was, and then they put a big air conditioner up there. It's about that big, little window unit. And it would keep it cool until you got up there. You put more than 2 people up there, and then it gave up. And then we got to move the junior church to the back, and but singing those songs were songs that we sung a lot for those things. So been a few years ago now. Well, if you have your Bible, if you'll turn, we're going to continue what we started last week. Last week it's almost a trilogy of stories. We get introduced to Jesus has come back from being across the lake, the Sea of Galilee, healed the actually more than one man, but there's one man most pronounced, but 2 men where demons were cast out of, and we read that story. And then he comes back across the lake, and he gets back towards Capernaum, and a man named Jairus meets him at the seaside, and implores him to come to his house because his daughter is on the verge of death. And so he starts making his way, and then that story is almost interrupted, and we read where there's a lady who had a condition of blood for years, and she just reached out and touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and he says, thy faith hath made thee whole. And so, in that scene, he's still making his way towards Jairus' house, but he hasn't got there yet. It's all happening in a matter of minutes, hours, however long that is. And so tonight we'll pick it back up. The lady has just been healed with a condition of blood that she had spent everything she had, right? I mean, that's what we read about. She had spent every dime. She had seen every doctor. She had absolutely no hope left, but Christ was her hope. And so we got to see that. So we're going to pick it back up just after that. So Matthew chapter 9, verse 23. And like we've been able to do for some time now, this event is recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so we'll read through all 3 scriptures, and we'll try to notice what's the same in all of them, and then what is unique when we go to each one. So that's our purpose. And then in that, we can pull, and we pulled this out several times, but I think it's worth repeating, that the Lord speaks to people as individuals. And we see that in this record, in these multiple gospel records, that, you know, Matthew was the first-hand account witness. He was part of the 12. Mark was not part of the 12, neither was Luke, so they got their information, from God, but also from being around those disciples as they told this story. They've told these events that while they were ministering earthly with Christ and what that looked like. And so these men had heard it verbatim, first-hand witnesses, their accounts, and then the leading of the Spirit of God in actually penning this down. But it gives us a very broad view. And, you know, I was, for lack of better terms, somebody always asks me, you know, how long have you been at New Testament? And I always joke, I was born on the second pew. Because that's where I spent my whole adult life. And I've really grown up. Now I'm on the third pew. So I think they're getting me close to the door, is what's going on. I got you. And so, you know, churches, and our pastor does a great job. He says, you know, churches take on the personality of the pastor. But churches themselves, and I can only speak for this one, there's been an evenness to the personality of the church that I've noticed through the years. You know, different pastors that I've sat under have different ways of presenting God's word, and they all bring their own story, you know, because your life experience kind of impacts how you go and tell other people. But there's been a very common theme here. This church has always been, I don't know, I've kind of felt it as being very a teaching style church, you know, and from my earliest memory through our current pastor right now, you know, and I love that fact that the Bible says apt to teach. You know, it's one of the qualifications of a pastor. And that's one way. But other churches are different, you know. And so I didn't have a very broad exposure growing up to different styles of churches. We were here. We were working here. This was the place where, you know, we ministered. And if we did go and visit somewhere else, it was probably to somebody that we were related to. I remember going a handful of times when my granddad pastored a church in Clinton. And so, you know, people would come in for the summer vacation, all the family, and, you know, and so we would all go and go out there to Clinton a couple of times. But we didn't travel around. We didn't. This is just where we were. So in my later teen years and early adult life, had the chance to be in a couple of different churches for various reasons. You know, one to court the most beautiful girl in the world, and I didn't even have juicy fruit gum, Pastor. I don't know how I made it, but she's still questioning that decision. I know, but you could see, you know, different personalities of different churches, and the Lord really kind of, I guess, helped me understand one time. He says, you know, David, again, not in an audible voice, but, you know, David, I've got multiple people that have recorded this under my direction, and they all have a unique personality to them, just like churches do, you know. So it's been good to see that. So Matthew is going to be a very brief record of the event that is next. So Matthew chapter number 9, verse 23. It says, "And Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the minstrels and the people making a noise. And he said unto them, Give place, for the maid is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when the people were put forth, he went in and took her by the hand, and the maid arose. And the fame thereof went abroad into all that land." So not a very long explanation. You know, from Matthew's record, we pretty much, you know, the Lord goes to the house, and we get a little bit of an insight here that this house is full of mourners. That was a job that some people, you know, had back then. Jairus was somebody of stature in the town, and so people had showed up, and just the custom and traditional way of mourning. You know, the young girl had died in the process of Jairus bringing Jesus there, and so people were going about what was going to be next, and that was going to be, you know, their version of comforting the family. It's amazing. In the South, we have a different tradition of trying to comfort the family. We cook. Yeah, you know, people show up with all sorts of things to eat, you know, and it's just our tradition. And other countries, other nationalities, other people groups have their own tradition. So the traditional form of mourning was taking place. And we know that she had passed away because the mourners were there. As a matter of fact, they were so confident in it when Jesus says, "No, she's not dead, she's sleeping." The Bible very plainly, and actually each gospel record records this little tidbit. Mark has a little different phrasing, but it says they laughed him to scorn, which really they belittled him. You know, they were professionals at this. We know what this is supposed to look like, and you're not. You don't know what you're talking about. So that's what all Matthew gives us. And so Matthew is very short, very concise in this record. Other places Matthew gets very long and gives us much more detail, but not for here. And so here's the big things. So, and this is from this one. Here's what I want to do. We can take Matthew's account, since it's the shortest, and we can kind of say that it's the most parsed down. It's the most refined. So it's going to have the major key elements. Now, it doesn't mean that the other things are not important. But Matthew is just strictly to the details right here. So here's the details we got. Number one, Jesus came. Number two, the young maiden was dead, and people were there mourning, and they scoffed when Jesus said, "She's not dead, she sleeps." And number three, Jesus resurrected her. And then the fourth one, which is not cursory, but we'll see later on, where he actually tells them, "Shh, don't tell anybody." But that "shh, don't tell anybody" turned into what Matthew records for us in verse 26, "and the fame thereof went abroad into all that land." You know, so there's the key elements. All right, and so when Mark records this for us and Luke records this for us, they're going to give us a few more details that Matthew didn't record, and those are important too. So let's notice how it stays the same. Okay, Jesus shows up, the girl is dead, he resurrects her, and his fame of this spreads abroad. All right, Mark is the next place for us to look. Mark chapter 5. And we would pick it up in verse 35. I meant to do this in Matthew. I was going to get just the very last of the previous piece of the story where the lady is healed, just so it kind of plants in our brain where this timeline of events. So at verse 34, he says, "And he said unto her," this is the woman who was healed from her issue of blood, "Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague." And while he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, "Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further?" Now that's an additional piece of information, right? Matthew didn't give us that little piece. So Jesus, this information was well known before Jesus came to the door. But Matthew records the most important part of the story. What's the most important part of the story? Jesus came. Yeah. This other, while it's kind of fun, it's fun to add this to the tidbit of it, it doesn't change the fact that Jesus comes. And he always comes. And you know, if we make this on a very personal note, you know, those times in our life where I don't know, for whatever reason. Maybe we're shocked when, the Lord shows up and does something in our life. The simple story is he always shows up. Actually, the simple story is he's never left us, And so no matter what that first part is, the girl's dead. This has happened over here. I just found out this piece of information. That's arbitrary in the sight of Christ. Those are fun details, but it doesn't make a difference on the main points. The main point is he's there. So we'll read on. 36. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, "Be not afraid, only believe." Now, I like that extra detail that Mark gives us, because at this point, Jairus is heartbroken, right? I mean, he is his greatest fear that he's living in the moment that my daughter may pass away has now come to fruition. He met Jesus at the seaside. As soon as he got off the boat, we get this image that Jairus is like, anxiously pacing. I can see him pacing up and down the beach, looking. Is that it? Is that little ship? Because they weren't big, so it wouldn't be too far off the horizon. He wouldn't be able to see it. So I can see him constantly looking, and Jesus is getting off the boat, and he's like, "Can you come right now?" And so they start making the way. So he has this news, and Jesus turns to him, and he doesn't ignore it. He talks to it, and he says, "I know this is a fearful time. You're human. I know you better than you know you. I created you." But he says, "Be not afraid. Only believe." Now, if we could backpedal in our minds a couple of weeks, we would see very similar words on a very stormy night on a Sea of Galilee that happened just a few days ago, literally timeline-wise. I know we've been studying this for weeks now, but, timeline-wise, it was just a few days ago where Jesus was sleeping and on the back of the boat, and the winds were coming, and the waves were crashing, and the boats were filling with water, and these very seasoned, salty fishermen were like, "We're about to go down." And he says the same thing to them. He says, "Why are you afraid? Where is your faith?" He says to Jairus, "Be not afraid, only believe." Verse 37. A piece of the information that Matthew doesn't convey to us is here, and it says, "And he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter and James and John, the brother of James." So he has the whole crew with him, but only 3 of them get to go on into Jairus' house. And I guess it would beg the question, why? Why those 3? Your guess is as good as mine. But I would say that it's a fine time to probably consider the fact that God has the authority in all those situations. We could ask the same thing today. Well, Lord, why this for this person, this for that person? And it's the same question that men have had down through the ages. Peter, at the very end, before Jesus goes back to heaven, the Lord comes to the seaside, and Peter's, he said, I'm out, I'm going fishing. And then they're out fishing, and John looks up and says, "Hey, there's Jesus." And so Peter jumps out of the boat, swims to him, and they have this bread and fish upon the fire. And then the Lord goes and he gives Peter some information about what future events will look like for him. He asks him those 3 questions. "Peter, do you love me?" Or he asks him 3 times. But then at the end he says, you'll be carried somewhere, I won't say against your will, but you'll be carried to your death. And he kind of infers the fact that John will live a longer life and have for lack of better terms, a natural death. And Peter's response is like, "Why?" And he says, "Well, that's the way it's going to be." I'm paraphrasing tremendously here. "So why these 3 men? I don't have an answer for you, other than God's wisdom. for whatever that case may be, God needed these three men to see this event for whatever task or whatever ministry work that they were going to be going through. And they're actually going to be sent out kind of in groups in the next chapter. We're going to get there pretty quickly, where Jesus sends them out to minister and to heal and to cast out spirits and different things. And so we know this. It was all done in preparation for them for what's next, whatever that case may be. So we got these three men. They go in by themselves. Verse number 38. And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, Why make ye this ado, and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, and entered in where the damsel was lying. And he took the damsel by the hand, and said unto her, Talitha cumi, which is being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years old. And they were astonished with great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat. So I think that these people honored what the Lord requested. I don't think they said a word about it. I don't think if somebody asked them what happened in there that they said, I don't know. Maybe they just said, God's good. But you have these mourners that they were confident in her death. I would say it's a fair assumption that they knew how to check a pulse. They knew how to check for a breath, they were, I don't know if we would compare them to a modern day mortuary business, but they would be the people you'd call when somebody had died in your home, and they came and did the customary burial things, the weeping and the songs and all the other pieces. They were professionals at this, so they knew what a dead body looked like. They knew that she was dead, but now she ain't. So they're the ones that went and said, we've never seen anything like this before. And I would imagine that they had somewhat of a reputation. As they had, in a small county like ours, there's not many people who probably don't know the two mortuaries in our county, and at least some of the people that work there. And so in a city like Capernaum, and a leader of the synagogue, these people that came to do this, they were trusted members of the local group. So when they said she was definitely dead and now she's not, people took notice, and the word grew. All right, let's look at Luke. He doesn't change much between he and Mark, but we'll finish up with our typical thing, and then we got to go back to Matthew. So Luke chapter number 8. And then verse 49 says, While he yet spake, there cometh one from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, Thy daughter is dead. Trouble not the master. But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, believe only. And now Luke gives us a little bit more that Mark didn't record for us. And he adds this, and she shall be made whole. Now, if you're the ruler, okay, where did you meet Jesus at? If we got to go back to last week, where did you meet Jesus at? For the day that we're talking about. I'm not saying in life, but did he meet him when he halfway through town, or was he waiting on the seashore for him? It appears that he's waiting on the seashore. And so he's like, please come with me. So they start, that's where they're going. But halfway through this journey, and you're probably not getting much more than arm's reach away from Jesus. I would have to imagine. You're going to be like, yeah, this way. You're side by side, side by side. And so you're going to be very present for when he stops. And he says, "Who touched me?" Now, we hear the disciples' response. They're like, "Who do you mean, who touched you? This place is crawling with people." And Jesus is like, no, somebody touched me. And so Jairus here is standing. I mean, he's got the front row seat of this event with this lady with the issue of blood. And now he's heard this conversation between Jesus and this lady, and he told her what? Thy faith hath made thee whole. Depart, be healed. You're healed from this plague. So you're Jairus, you're like, wow. And then you turn back around to start towards your house, and this familiar face is walking down the alleyway, this street. And he locks eyes with you. And you know this is not a good sign. Maybe the guy's like shaking his head. And if you're Jairus, you just kind of melt there for a minute. You probably stumble. You probably, I don't want to hear what you're about to tell me. And the man says it, and then Jesus, the guy that you sought him, he turns to you and he says these words. He says, "Fear not. Believe only, and she shall be made whole." And we could add there, just like this other lady was, because that was a very fresh moment. I don't know if you're Jairus, do you take a big breath? I don't know if you can sigh relief, but at this point you're like one step in front of the other. Okay, because remember your friend, and Mark recorded it, and so did Luke. Your friend that came from the house said, "Hey, don't bother him anymore. It's too late." And Jesus is like, "Oh no, it's not. If you want me to come, I'll still come." And so I think that Jairus still had this. I think it's provable that Jairus was like, "Lord, I know that you can take care of this for me." We don't see it pinned, but we see the actions thereof. And when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in save Peter and James and John and the father and the mother of the maiden. And all wept and bewailed her, but he said, "Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth." And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. They were confident. And he put them all out and took her by the hand and called, saying, "Maid, arise." Now, Mark gives us the Aramaic there. The Lord instructed him to use his words at that moment. We don't see that very often. As a matter of fact, the only other time that I know it's recorded, that where it's really recorded, Jesus, Aramaic. Thank you. I couldn't get all the syllables in there. Was on the cross. So we have got this one, and then on the cross where the Spirit of God instructs the writer to, use my exact words right here. But the translated, "Maid, arise." And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway, and he commanded to give her meat. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them that they should tell no man what was done. So 3 separate accounts of the same story. Matthew keeps it super simple, right? So we don't get lost in all the, I don't even want to say it that way. We don't get lost in the other pieces. But what is it that is the most important part that Matthew gives us? Jesus comes. The man asks, Jesus comes. Jesus heals her. That's the most important part. Now, these other pieces it's almost like watching a black and white television or a color TV or IMAX. In Mark and Luke, we almost have the IMAX event where we get to see all the other pieces, but it still doesn't change the main thing. By Christ alone, through faith alone. It's the same story over and over and over and over and over again. All right, Matthew is the only one that gives us these next two little events that take place in the New Testament. So we're going to work your way back to Matthew chapter number 9. So in Matthew chapter number 9, we'll pick it up where we left. We left off in verse number 26, where the maid arose and the fame went abroad into all the land. Again, I think that came from the mourners, because the mother and father and disciples were told, hey, don't talk about this event like this. But the mourners were going to be saying all sorts of things. Verse number 27. So, and when Jesus departed thence, so he left that house, 2 blind men followed him, crying and saying, Thou, Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he was come into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus saith unto him, Believe ye that I am able to do this? And they said unto him, Yea, Lord. Then touched he their eyes, saying, According to your faith be it unto you. And their eyes were opened, and Jesus straightly charged them, saying, See that no man know it. But they, when they were departed, spread abroad his fame into all the country. Key takeaways here. Jesus says, do you believe I can do this? I don't know if we should ever get past the very simple idea that all that he's ever asked for us is to take him at his word. You know? And we're not talking about faith based on something that is not directly out of the Word of God is wishful thinking. It's our version of, I hope so. But faith from God's Word is sure. It is his version of hope, because in the Bible we read the word hope, and it's not the wishful thinking hope. It is the sure expectation that this is going to happen. That's why another name for Christ, we could say he is our hope. Well, we are confident, we are sure that he will do all that he has said he was done. You know, Paul would say, you know, it was on the tip of my tongue. You all help me out. Well, the song rings to mind. I know whom I have believed in, right? To keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. Yeah, that's that hope, which is not hope. Again, we don't use the word in the same way these days. It's changed through the centuries. So Paul would say, I am very confident that what Christ has promised that he will do, he will do. The Lord here asks these men, do you believe that I can do this? And we do. He says, well, according to your faith, be it unto you. And it was. There's one more little snippet, verse 32. We can just kind of keep reading. So, and when they were departed, spread abroad his fame into all the country. And as they went out, and don't you love the way Matthew just kind of like, and then. So verse 32, and as they went out, behold, they brought to him a dumb man possessed with a devil. And when the devil was cast out, the dumb spake, and the multitudes marveled, saying, it was never so seen in Israel. But the Pharisees said, he casteth out devils through the prince of the devils. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. And then saith unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers in to his harvest. So we finished up, it was a busy day. You know, Matthew, he does write it and then, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was one moment after the next moment after the next moment. It's just in Matthew's timeline of record keeping, he's saying that this is the next thing I want you to know about, and this is the next thing I want you to know about. The man that we're studying after, who put these notes together, his belief system is that he thinks that that Jairus' daughter was healed, and the blind man and the dumb man were healed pretty quickly thereafter. It was almost a continuation of a day when Jesus was going around doing these things. So with that being said, what do you think? If you were to guess, and we only have a few minutes, we'll go to 2 more quick places and we'll be done. After seeing and being around, and we hear about all this taking place, it says that the fame was being spread abroad. What is the next logical thing you think will happen? Well, it's not logical, because the next thing that will happen is like, we don't want you. Yeah. Let's look. Matthew records it a little bit later on. Mark gives it much more quickly. Mark gets it in chapter 6. But since we're in Matthew, let's go to chapter 13. Again, Matthew is not as concerned about chronological order. He is very concerned about everything the Lord has us to give him, and this is the way the Lord wanted him to give it to us. So we don't have to question it. It's just in this record the Lord gave us, the chronology was not the most important thing. So chapter 13 of Matthew, and it's verse 53. So we read there, you know, in chapter number 9 that, you know, he went about teaching in the synagogues and different things. We kind of pick it up here in 53, and it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these parables, he departed thence, and when he was come into his own country, because his own country is Nazareth up there, right? So Capernaum and Nazareth are really close together. It's all in that northern territory. He was coming to his own country. He taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished and said, whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Remember, his fame is spreading. Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joseph and Simon and Judas, and his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. You know, so we just saw, you know, this miraculous stories we've been reading over the past couple of weeks, insomuch that even a ruler of the synagogue of Capernaum was like, I need your help. But yet, they were like, but aren't you this other person? Here, let's look at Mark's record, because he backs it up to this event with Jairus. So Mark chapter number 6. So just to give you the context, and this is where we'll end tonight, we just a few moments ago read Mark chapter number 5 about the healing of this young lady. It's verse 42, and straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years, and they were astonished with a great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat. Chapter 6, verse 1. And he went out from thence and came into his own country. That's what we read in Matthew 13. And his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many, hearing him, were astonished, saying, from whence hath this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands? They weren't arguing with what he had done. They just said, wow, he's doing all sorts of things around here. Our ears have been just ringing with the news of things that he's been involved with. There was a song I was listening to last night, and I wish I could think of the name of it, but a couple of pieces in it, a part of the chorus says, well, ask the blind man, he saw it all. And again, it's just kind of talking about the dumb spake and the deaf heard, and the cripple ran by us. That was, and the cripple come running this way, or something. That's all part of that song right there. So they had been hearing all these pieces of information, and they're like, how can this guy be part of that? Verse 3, is not this the carpenter? He put some cabinets in my house a couple years ago, right? He fixed my front door. He built this shed out back for me. This is the carpenter's son. Is this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judah and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended at him. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country, and his own kin, and his own house. And he could there do no mighty work, save that he laid his hands upon a few sick folk and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he went round about the villages teaching. That's the next logical thing. You haven't seen, but you've gotten word of. I don't know how fast news did travel then. Because you didn't have Snapchat or Instagram. So I don't know if the word of what happened on the far side of the Sea of Galilee had already trickled back over. Fishermen were crossing the sea back and forth fairly regularly. Trade goods would go back and forth. So I can't imagine that the news of the wild maniac of Gadara, the two of them, and what has happened with them, and has not made it back over to Capernaum yet. It probably has, I could imagine. But he had been doing things around that area for months now, And so we've been reading about this. It would appear to be a very big day about Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood and the two blind men and the deaf man, or the dumb man. But he'd been doing all sorts of things all around the country, and yet, because of their unbelief, he did not many works there. And that's the key point. It's the key point. Faith, belief, taking him at his word. Questions or comments for tonight?
Jesus telling those he healed, not Satan.
Yeah.
Two thoughts on that. First one, I don't think really applies to this, but the best way to get a secret spread is to tell somebody not Satan.
So Jesus was using reverse psychology this whole time. Maybe, I don't know. Russell's like, yeah, I think so. Don't tell nobody.
But then the second, I like it.
Okay.
He tells them not to say it, and they turn and go away because what he did for me is too good news.
Yeah.
They shared that gratitude.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you explain it? How do you rationalize it? I don't know. My daughter, I waited, and then this man came out of the synagogue and said, it's too late.
Yeah.
She's done.
Yeah.
She's dead. And Jesus said, do you still want me to come with you? Sure, why not? I don't know. You put me in that exact situation.
Yeah,
You didn't realize it.
right.
But he had faith.
He did.
He saw what happened.
But then how do you explain, like, telling that story to somebody else? Yeah, I went down, I waited, this, the man came out and said, she's dead, she's gone, there's no point, and then he walked in, and she was alive. I can't explain it. It's an amazing thing. When you can't explain it, you just have to say, God did it.
I would ask the same question about, can you explain salvation? No. I think the similarities are just, I mean, I don't think that there's any difference, to be honest with you, because at some point, and we know kids are the pinnacle of faith, of just very simply taking God at His word. And so the starkness of contrast may not be just there, but getting into my adult life, at some point you're like, there is no other hope, and that's where Jarius was at. He says, do you believe me? And he's like, Lord, I got nobody, I got nothing else. There is no other hope outside of you right now. And I guess maybe in a very minuscule minded way for me, that's the best explanation of salvation I could offer. There's no other hope anywhere else. And he asked, he'll ask the disciples here coming up, will you leave me? And they said, where will we go? You're the one that has the words of eternal life. There's no other hope. We got nothing else. So, well, let's pray.